I want to share with you some stories of church hurt that I have personally experienced. Now, these are not ones that have been given to me secondhand. These are not ones that have come specifically from Chatty Men of Noonan that I posted on there. These are ones that I have witnessed myself in my time, just in the church in general, going back to when I was a child, all the way up until, maybe almost not quite a decade ago, but maybe 7, 8 years ago. And so I just want to share a few with you this morning of things that have caused and created church hurt in and around when I was present to hear the screaming and fighting or the disappointment and crying, all those things. The first one that comes to mind is the color of carpet. This was a big deal. There was color of carpet that was changing. It was one particular color, and then they decided, you know what, we should maybe step into this century. And there was a big discussion, and we could not change the color of carpet. It created a lot of hurt. The second one is the color of paint on the walls. That was an enormous thing. Like, there had to be a vote. We were going to vote on the color of paint that was painted inside of the sanctuary because we could not paint that an obscene color. That was just absolutely ridiculous. And we would rather just tear people apart than paint the color of the walls a little bit different color. That has caused some church hurt. That was an entertaining conversation to witness as well. Here's another one. The argument about poinsettias on the stage at Christmas. This was a big one. Actually, as I'm looking at this list, all of these ended up being big ones. But this one, good gracious alive, it was like they just couldn't fathom. We cannot fathom a Christmas without poinsettias on the stage. It's just not the same. The volume of the drums, there's that. We've not here at Foundation, but other places I've been at, the volume of the drums has been just an enormous thing. In fact, at the 9 o'clock, I said this, the volume of the drums, and someone shouted, "They're not loud enough." And I was like, my man, let's go. Preach, baby. Yeah, I know. I told him, I said, I don't think anyone has ever told Matt, can you hit those things harder? Never in his life. Here's another one that caused a lot of church hurt. We moved the place where we put the Christmas tree traditionally. It was not in the same place that it has been for a long time. We moved it, and that caused some intense stomach pains, I think. Someone sat in someone's seat that they had been sitting in for quite a long time. That seat was marked with a pillow, and that was not good. That was not good. I remember vividly this moment where there was a lot of despair and grieving. That there were kids that would not stop running in the sanctuary, and they had defiled the house of God, and this was not a good thing. This was not a good thing. What was even worse, the only thing that could top kids running in the sanctuary and the church hurt that caused was when they found out that those same kids were stealing communion and eating it as a snack after the gathering. The horror. Here's another big one. The time that the youth pastor wore flip-flops to church. I was the youth pastor. Yeah, how about that? And then this was another one, last one I'll share. There's a thing we used to do in the church I grew up in called Youth Night. As we're on Sunday nights, the youth, like the middle school, high school students, we call them youth groups. The youth got to be in charge of the Sunday night gathering. We got to do the whole thing. We get to pick the music. We got to teach, we do the communion thing, the offering thing, like we could do the whole thing. Like it was up to youth to do the entire thing. And I loved it, and it was great. And I had this really great idea, me and my buddies, because we had a band and we were trying to get our stuff together. But there was not enough space on the stage for our activities. And so we moved the pulpit. That's a no-no. You do not move the pulpit to have instruments on the stage. That is a no-no. You can go by. Now here's the thing. The pulpit was like this big. Like it's this big and like this tall. And then it was like 8 foot wide. It was enormous. And so like if you put a sixth grader behind it, you know what I'm saying? You can't see, like it's like, where is this guitar coming from? Oh, there he is. You know what I'm saying? Like this just wouldn't work. But that caused quite a stir because we moved it without permission. And then we got in a lot of trouble. Church hurt, right? It's just when hurt happens, when people are upset, people are just furious. People are beside themselves. People are just like, golly, this is no good. Church hurt. Pain caused by people in a church. Now, those are silly examples. Though at the time, you would not think they were silly. At the time, you would think, I don't know, I'm sure y'all could probably imagine. There was gnashing of teeth. There's screaming. There's yelling. There was Christian curse words being said back and forth in loud tones of voice. All those things were happening. So it wasn't silly in the moment, right? But looking back on us, like, good gracious. Man, people got so upset. Church hurt. Today, I'm going to share with you probably the greatest lesson for us to learn straight from Jesus himself about church hurt. And it doesn't get any clearer. It doesn't get any more real than this. We start in the book of Luke, which we've been in for a long time. 8 or 9 weeks we've been talking and walking through the Gospel of Luke, which was written by a guy named Luke, who was a physician in the first century. He was an avid church planter, or advocate of church planting with Paul, the church planter. He wrote 2 volumes, Gospel of Luke, Volume 1, the book of Acts, Volume 2. And the reason he wrote those was to bring certainty to a friend of his named Theophilus. And he chronicles and researches and studies, and he writes these 2 accounts to bring certainty to this guy or this group of people, we're not sure, named Theophilus. And that's the words he used. I want you to be certain of what you've been taught about the life and ministry of Jesus. And so we're in that in the 15th chapter. And this is the setting. Luke sets us up and lets us know. It says, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and teachers of the law muttered, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. So here's the thing. We got religious and non-religious people that are here to hear Jesus. The first group is referred to as tax collectors and sinners. The second group is Pharisees and teachers of the law. And they're all there. They can hear what Jesus is saying. And in particular, we get a quote from these Pharisees and teachers of the law where it says they muttered, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Now, the word mutter is always entertaining to me. It's like, how do you mutter? How does one mutter? That's what I'm thinking when it's mutters. It's the sinners and tax collectors. I don't know. But they're muttering, and that's what they're saying. This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. I think the key word is not mutter. The key word is he welcomes. Welcomes. There's so much in the word welcome. In other words, they felt like they could belong in and around the table of Jesus. Though all of the religious folks recognized that they actually didn't fall in line with what Jesus believed. But Jesus had the ability to welcome them. The thing is, Jesus welcomed the non-religious, the disconnected, and he also welcomed the religious. It wasn't like he was saying, hey, if you're religious, you can't come and be a part of this. They were welcomed as well. It wasn't that it was just, hey, I want only religious people and keep sinners and tax collectors and those kind of people away. No, they were welcomed as well. He was there to say, hey, I've got some insights to share with you about the kingdom of God. And the truth is, it doesn't matter if you're religious or non-religious. Every single person should probably hear them, take note of them, and possibly start to look at your life through these truths. So everyone was welcomed at the table. The problem was the religious folks were pretty upset that it wasn't exclusive just to them. You see, Jesus lived by a code that we find in Scripture in his own life that states this: you can belong before you believe and before you behave. That I'll welcome you even if you don't believe what I believe. And here's the thing. Every single person that was even included as a follower of Jesus, they still didn't have a full belief. They still didn't have the ability to wrap their arms around the truth of who Jesus was going to be. There wasn't a single person in Luke 15 that thought Jesus was going to die on the cross for their sins, was the Son of God that will have a second return. None of them were thinking that. At best, they were thinking this is a prophet, we're going to overthrow Rome. That's at best, even if they had that in Luke 15. And so every single one of them, none of them were full believers at the time. And so that's the whole thing. Jesus was like, look, as you are discovering my significance, you can eat at my table. Because he knew that if you can belong in a place, that gives you the best opportunity to discover what's true. Now, the religious leaders, they kind of flipped it. They believed you needed to behave, and eventually you would believe, and then you could belong. That, hey, whether you believe or not, there's a code of conduct that when you show up, I expect you to live by. So don't be bringing your world trash into our little religious circle. You need to get your stuff together, and then you can show up. And while you are behaving, because it's the right thing to do, we're going to teach you a little bit, right? We're going to teach you. And if you behave right and you learn what you need to learn, then we will accept you. Then you will belong. And so it was so different for Jesus to say, no, I welcome everybody. I welcome everybody, whether they believe or don't believe. I would love for them to sit at my table. Jesus feels the tension, and so he decides to tell them a story to teach them what he's expecting. We pick it up in the very next verse. Verse 3. Then Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I found my lost sheep. I tell you, in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. Now, what's interesting here is that Jesus is talking to a group of people that are very familiar with the shepherd occupation. They might not be shepherds, but they know how it works because this is a big part of who they are. And so when he starts saying this little phrase, he says, when he loses one, he says, doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And all the people sitting there are like, no, you don't go look for the lost sheep until you find it. You go look for the lost sheep until you realize, you know what, it's getting dark and I should get back to my 99. You go look for the lost sheep until you figure out, you know what, that sheep has gone so far away, I'm going to lose more sheep if I continue this journey because of how long I'm going to be gone. So by the time I find the one, if I find him, by the time I get back, there'll be 3 or 4 more that got picked off by people. And so you just got to wait. It's an asset game, right? Like, all right, well, how do I protect the assets that I've got? How do I move in a positive direction? How do I make my bottom line continue to go up? But Jesus looks at him and says, doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? It's almost like Jesus was saying, I know your answer to the question, but I'm trying to tell you I've got a better answer. We read this story and we have a decision to make. Do we want to be like the Good Shepherd? Or do we want to be like Jesus? Like, that's the question. Do we want to be like Jesus? And if we do, if we want to be like Jesus, we will search until we find the one. We will search until we find the one. Now, that's a great story. And say, man, Jesus, great job. Like, we were just muttering, and now you have completely redirected and refocused us to an incredible truth that, okay, you're right. You know what? We got to search till we find the one. This makes so much more sense. Thank you, Jesus, for sharing this with me. Thank you so much. I'm grateful. This taught me a lot. I'll never forget this story. 99 sheep, one that's lost. We're going to search till we find it. Now there's 100 sheep. This is such a good story. Jesus could have stopped there, but Jesus didn't even take a breath. Jesus tells the story, and the very next verse says this: or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? Now, we need to take a little Zach Morris TV time out here, because I don't want none of you men saying, hey, look, even Jesus says women should clean the house. I don't want any of y'all using this scripture. That would be wrong. That's out of context. You don't be using the Bible as a weapon. You know what I'm saying? I'm just making sure that we have made the disclaimer. That's not what's supposed to be happening. Time back in. And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I found my lost coin. In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. So the lady's got 10 coins. She loses one, and she's like, shoot, I better light that lamp, sweep this house, because I'm going to find that coin. And then what? After she does that, she finds the coin, and then she's like, hey, let me call my girls and tell them I lost the coin, but I cleaned the house and found it. Come, let's have a party, you know? And all of a sudden, it's like, Girl-a-palooza, let's go. This is what's happening. In other words, we got to ask ourselves a question. Do we want to be like Jesus? And if we do, we will put the work in to find the one. Now, I want to make sure we're paying attention. It's not just about the idea of we will search to find the one. We will put the work in to find the one. I want you to notice that both of the first two stories Jesus told ends with a party that's taking place in heaven. It says the angels are rejoicing, that God is rejoicing, that heaven is rejoicing over the one who decides to repent and give their life to the Father. Over one. There's a huge party. This is what happens. This is what I know. When heaven celebrates something, that is God saying, this is what I want. This is what I like. This is what I want you to do. Do more of these things. Let's have more parties because y'all are doing more of these type of things. So let's ask the question. Does Jesus and the heavens party when we give up on the sheep that got too far away? Or they're like, yes, thank goodness, pop the bubbly. The sheep is so far gone, we're going to give up. No, there's no parties for that. There's no parties for that. When are the parties? When we search till we find the one. When we put the work in to find the one. And so Jesus could have stopped. He could have stopped right there. And man, we have such a clear picture. We got to put some work in. We got to do it until we do it. We got to go after him, search until we find it. It's going to take some time. There's going to be some obstacles. It's going to be inconvenient. Who knows how long it's going to take? No doubt. He could have stopped right there, and we would have such a clear picture of what we're supposed to do, what heaven gives its stamp of approval for. But he doesn't. Doesn't take a breath. He just tells another story, which is strange to me. It's like, Jesus, you done made the point twice. Like, were they not listening to the first two? Like, were they not picking up on what you're putting down? Like shepherds, women, house, sheep, the whole thing, coins. He just keeps talking. He begins to tell a story about a father who had two sons, older son, younger son. And the younger son came to the father and said, hey, I have matured, and I would like to have everything you're going to give me when you die, but I would like to have it now because I'm very mature. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure that the father was like, okay. And he's like, oh, say that again. He was like, that stuff, all that stuff you're going to give me when you croak and you stop breathing, I would like it now. I would like to enjoy it now while you're still alive. Because who knows how long you're going to keep living? You know what I'm saying? Like, I got things to do. And so the father says, okay. And he gives it to him. And then the guy takes it. I don't know. I'm envisioning a money bag. I don't know how big this bag was. Maybe it's like he gives it to him. I don't know. But he gives it to him. And then it says the son was like, I don't want to stay home. I got some living to do. And so they set off. And he just sets off and he goes and he starts living it up. He starts doing all kind of crazy things with money. Like all kind of things his dad would never say, hey, this is a good idea, son. You know what? I approve of this. He does all kind of things. And the Bible gives us a little bit of insight. You can go read it. There's some children in here. I'm not going to get all of it. But he does some things with the money. You know what I'm saying? He does some things. And he goes and does that. And before you know it, though, this is what happens. For all those of you who have not gotten to a place of great maturity, is that money only lasts so long if you don't have an income source. And so even though you start with a lot, if you spend it all and there's nothing replenishing it, you are then what we know as broke, like absolutely broke. And if you don't have a job or you don't have other parents that are giving you inheritances early, then you got nothing. You have absolutely nothing. On top of that, a famine hit, and so there is nothing nowhere. People, like, there's no one's got anything. And so he is hungry, he's struggling, and he just decides, you know what, I'm going to go work at a farm, slopping pigs. And so that's what he does. And he's starting to even think about, he's like, I am so broke. I think I might just steal some food from these piglets. You know, I might just reach in there and get a little piece of that corn on the cob they've already been nibbled on, and I might just take a bite myself. I've never seen like pig slop, first century Palestine pig slop. I've never seen that. But I'm just imagining what that could possibly be. And that's what he's like thinking, like, you know what? I might could live off this right now. And he decides, you know what? I don't think it works for me. In fact, Luke tells us this. It says, when he came to his senses, verse 17, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am, starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And so he comes to his senses, it says. He's full of guilt and shame. He's like, look, I know there's no chance my dad is going to see me as a son ever again. I have ruined that. I have taken that off the table. No chance. But maybe there's a chance that he would pay me to do some work. Because the people that he pays, like he employs, they're better off than I am. So maybe I can get on and get some work. And then at least I got something to eat. And so to do this, he writes a speech, right? Y'all heard the speech. I'll read it to you again. He says, this is what he's got. He's rehearsing it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if he's got a bathroom mirror. He don't have a bathroom. He don't have nothing. I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's looking at the pig slop water and pretending like, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And so he sets off back towards home. And I can imagine, you could probably imagine, he's rehearsing that speech. He's like, okay, all right, he's going to look at me. He's going to be mad. And he's going to probably yell and say, where'd all the money go I gave you? That should have lasted however long he thought it should have lasted. And he's going to ask me, what did you do with it? And then somehow in those questions, I've got to work in, I have sinned against heaven and against you. Please let me have a tear. Squeeze a tear out. And he's rehearsing. He's rehearsing the speech so he can give to his dad because he's trying to figure out, how do I do anything other than eat pig food? So he sets off towards home. Verse 20. It says, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Now, what's great here is we got to make sure we understand what we're saying. The word compassion is our key word in verse 20. He had compassion on her. He was filled with compassion for him. Compassion is more than a feeling. It's a feeling that will create action. So if you've got a feeling towards someone and you don't do anything about it, well, you don't have compassion. You have, I feel sorry for them. Which is a thing. Like, that's a real thing. Like, you can feel sorry for someone and you don't do anything about it. And that's just the reality, right? We just feel, wow, I feel bad for that guy, you know? Compassion always leads to action. And in fact, any time that the word compassion is associated with Jesus, it's a feeling that he gets, and then you see the result of it. He does something. It'll have a phrase in the Bible that says something like this, and he saw the crowds and had compassion on them. And then it tells them how he had compassion on them. Compassion is an action word. And so he runs, gives him a kiss, puts his arms around him. He ran to him. But that's not all. Verse 22. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Bring a ring and put it on his finger, and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. And so not only does he go up and he's like, let me kiss you, son. Let me put my arms around you. There's a bear hug involved. He ran to him. He's out of breath. He's like, oh my goodness. And then there's a kiss. And then he's like, oh, well, I'm not even done. And then what does he say? He says, quick. So when I think of quick and I think of this guy, I think of a very wealthy man, right? He's got a bunch of people he employs, huge estate, enough to where he can take a big old chunk of his inheritance, would have been a third in first century. He takes a third of his entire assets, gives it to his younger son for him to go off and waste. So this guy's wealthy. So when he says quick, he's really saying, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the kind of thing that's happening. He's like, hey, robe, not just any robe, the best robe. He must have had a bunch of robes, but one of them was really good. He said, bring the best robe, put it on this boy, get a ring, put it on his finger. I need sandals on his feet. Bring the fat cow from out back. We're having steaks tonight. You know, that's what he's saying. Why? Because he was dead and he's alive again. He was lost and he's found. So we have to celebrate. Now, most important part of this part of the story is it says, while he was a long way off, he saw him. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us how far the driveway was. I'm just picturing a big farm type estate type thing. And obviously there's a road of some sort. Maybe it's a driveway. I don't know. It wasn't a driveway. They didn't have cars. You know what I'm saying? Whatever it was, a walkway thing, a path. Thank you, path. That was good. Right? Good word. There's a long thing. And it says, evidently, he had the ability to see a long way off. Open, maybe it's flat. I don't know. A long ways off. He can see. And he sees him coming. Now, I don't know. I have no idea how many nights that as the day's winding down, that the dad sits out on the porch, staring out at the big old path that's coming out his way, just hoping, is today the day my son comes home? It doesn't tell us. From the very first day that he takes the inheritance and goes off to the day he comes back, the Bible does not tell us how many days are in between them, but it's a long time. Now, how many nights did the father sit up there and look and look and look and nothing? And nothing. Now, I'm imagining him, these guys that like to work on farms kind of thing, they got projects every day, and they're official with their project. Like, I got to do this, I'm going to knock this off the list, and then the wife adds 10 more, and he got to knock those off the list, and he gets back to his list, and he's knocking things off the list. But I got to imagine, like all of his tasks take him to the front yard, right? Even if it's stuff in the back in the shop or wherever he's at some point he's like, you know what? I'm going to take the long way around to get to wherever I got to go, just because I want to make sure I'm looking. I just want to see. Now, how many times had he walked around the front of the house and looked down and said, God, it's today the day. It's today the day he comes home. And nothing. Doesn't tell us how many days. What it does tell us is the day that it was the day, the father was ready. The father was ready. Robe, ring, sandals, steaks, party, I'm ready. On the porch, I'm ready. So when we get here, we have to ask the question, do we want to be like Jesus? And if we say yes, here's the truth. We will be ready when the one is ready. Which means that we will be ready many days when the one is not ready. But them being ready has nothing to do with our being ready. And Jesus could have stopped right there. And we could have said, man, what a great trilogy of stories. We got lost sheep, lost coin, lost son, all of them end with parties. This is so good. But Jesus doesn't stop. And Jesus actually adds a part 2 to this story. Same story, same circumstances, same exact people involved in it. However, he goes to the very next piece and part of it. He gets to the very next piece and part of it. It says this. It says, the older brother became angry and refused to go in. So this is what happened. The older brother came in from working. He was a good worker. He was great. He'd been doing everything that the father had asked him to do over and over again. Whatever the things were that were set up in his life that he was supposed to do, he kept doing it. Whatever the things were that the father said, hey, this is on your task list for today, this is what I want you to do. And as he's coming in from the field that day, as things are wrapping up, he starts walking up to the house. And he starts walking up to the house, and he sees that there's a party happening. And so he asks one of the servants, he's like, hey, what is happening? This is great. What's going on? And the servant looks at him and says, oh, dude, your little brother came home. Like, your little brother came home. He's in the house. And so your dad, he killed the fat cow, and we are steaking. We are barbecuing. Like, this is legit. We're having a night. This is a night. And it says, the brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. Now think about it. Had his father that morning asked him to do anything, his answer would have been, yes, sir. If he had said, hey, I need you to bale this hay, put it on your back, climb over that mountain, and feed some goats on the other side, and then be back before dinner, he would have been like, good gracious, Daddy, okay, you know? And all of a sudden, his dad says, bro, come inside. And he's like, no, sir, Dad, can't do that. I will do anything you ask me to do, but I am not going to get involved in this silliness. Father pleads with him. Verse 29, but he answered his father. He says, look, all these years I've been slaving for you. I never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him? My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. You know, we've been asking the question after we read the story, do we want to be like Jesus? There's a better question to ask here in this moment. And it's, are we anything like the older brother? In my Chatty Men of Noonan post, one guy said this. When I asked, the question was, hey, I'm a pastor. I'm prepping for this series. I'm just curious, for those of you who don't go to church, does church hurt play any kind of role in that decision? And dozens of people have responded with some stories and comments. And one of the guys shared with me this. He said, yeah, church trauma plays a big role. I've watched pastors tell kids who turn to Christ for a second chance that they aren't worthy of his love. I've been personally told that I'm going to hell for my tattoos and my earrings. We are really good at being like the older brother. In fact, it almost kind of comes natural to us. It's basically the easiest thing we can do. You see, the older brother was devoted to his father. His friends were devoted to his father, but they had no lens for the disconnected from the father. Devoted to the father. Right? See what I'm saying here? Like, devoted to God, but zero lens for anybody who was not devoted to the father. And that is the formula for an older brother. Everything dad wants is great, but if you're not connected to dad, I got nothing for you. Which the crazy thing is that the father actually had just been waiting on the disconnected the whole time. Which is so strange that somehow the older brother missed that one of the most important things in his father's life was being ready for his son, who was disconnected, to come home. And the older brother missed that. For some reason, he was so devoted to do everything the father asked. He had somehow failed to pick up on the significance that the disconnected played in the life of the father. The problem is the brother saw his life through what he had done. Remember what he said? He said, I've been slaving for you. I've never disobeyed your orders. In other words, he's saying, look, here's the deal. All I've asked for is a goat from time to time. Can I get a goat? That's all I want. I want a goat to celebrate with my friends. I don't need the fat cow. I just needed a goat. And I've been slaving for you. I always do exactly what you want. Like, this is what I do. This is who I am. And he was trying to say, this is why I'm worthy, because of what I've done. And the father was looking at him. He was like, you're missing it. No, the reason I want you to be with me is not because of what you've done, but because of who you are. You're my son. And you can't earn being my son. You can't do so much for me to say, yeah, now you're my son. And then what the truth is, at the end of the day, when we start looking at our relationship with the Father through that particular lens, man, that's when we realize it's so easy to be an older brother. But what God is attempting to tell us, to show us, is that none of you, even those of you who have done what you think in your mind is every single thing I've ever asked, for those of you who say, I've been slaving away, working for you and for your church, and he would look at you and say, look, no, you are still, even in that place of slaving away, of giving everything you've got, which is what the older brother was saying, even in that place, you are still not worthy. You still haven't done enough to deserve a father's love. But I don't give out love because you're worthy. I give out love because I got love to give out. And at the end of the day, you can't earn that. That's a gift I'm giving to you. Which is why when the son returns to me, I love him like he never left. Because it was my love to give in the first place. And you might find that reckless and illogical, but it is absolutely biblical. The thing is, this is one of those places where we've got to take action. We've got to do something about this. There's no, let me figure it out. No, this is clear. Jesus has done now told the same story 3 times. Like, it doesn't get any clearer than this. Like, he just spelled it out for us. He was like, just in case you don't speak shepherd, let me speak house cleaning to you. And if you don't speak house cleaning to you, let me talk sons and fathers relation. Let's do this. Like, let me just paint this picture. This is what it should have looked like. This is what should have happened, right? The older brother, as he's coming in from the field, and all of a sudden he's like, I think I hear some music playing. This must be party. What are we celebrating? Excuse me. Fella, do you know what's going on in my dad's house? Oh yeah, your brother came home. Immediately, this is what should have happened. He should have said, my brother? He said, yeah, your brother. My little brother came home. Yeah, your little brother came home. He's like, where is he? I guess he's in the house. Okay. And he would have started going in there. And I don't know what kind of back porch they got, but there's probably steps to the back porch. So he walked up the back steps, and maybe, I don't know, if they're like houses I grew up in, the back door connects to the kitchen. And he walks in the kitchen, and he's looking. And there's people everywhere because it's a party. And there's people everywhere. And he's looking, and he's scanning the room, and his mama's over by the stove because she's realizing she don't have enough food for all these people. So she's making more food, and she's about to fix this because this is the last minute, you know what I'm saying? So she's going to be ready. And so they lock eyes. They don't even have to say anything. Doesn't have to say a word to him. She knows who he's looking for because mama looks over at the older brother and she looks at him and he's looking around, makes eye contact with her, and she just looks at him and she goes, he's in the living room. He's okay, thank you, mama. And he runs into the living room, and then he gets in the living room, and he's scanning the living room, and he's looking. He's like, where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? And then he locks eyes with him. Maybe he's holding a red Solo cup. I don't know. But he's over there, and they're having a party, and they're like, man, there's this whole thing, and they make eyes with each other. And all of a sudden, the little brother, the guy that just walked into the room, is the guy he's looked up to his whole life. It's the guy who hit a ball further than he was because he was 3 or 4 years older than him, right? It's the guy that wrestled him to the ground and like punched him in the gut and said, don't you dare tell mom I'll make you cry again, right? Like those things happen. But the guy that he's looked up to forever, and they lock eyes across the room, and he's looking at him, and his little brother looks at him, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, excuse me, my brother. And he walks away from the conversation, and it's like, man, come on. And it's a big old hug. And it's like, I'm so glad you're home. Man, what took so long? Like every day, me and Dad, we've just been waiting. And you don't have to tell me. You don't have to tell me this, we can do another day. Golly, I'm so happy you're here. Man, this has made my week, made my day, made my life. Come on. Have y'all seen? My little brother just came home. That's what should have happened. But instead, he's still in the backyard. His little brother's in the front. He's celebrating with strangers. And his big brother's just pissed in the backyard. I feel like we should tell this story every Sunday. So we want to take action. This is why we do Good Friday in the Square. We could do it here. Everything's already set up. It would be so much more convenient to do it in this facility. Everything is already set up. We're going to take it all out and we're going to put it in the square. Because there are little brothers who have still said, I might go see Dad, but I'm not going. I will not step foot in a house like that. No. Because I know the kind of people that are in those houses. And so we take it to a place of common ground. A street that is shared by every thought and religion as we make our way to and from the things that are important in our lives. South Court Square. And Friday night, we will have a conversation that acknowledges church hurt in the open. And then I will share what I believe to be the solution for all hurt, not just church hurt, which is the cross of Jesus. And we will do so on Good Friday, the day that we remember Jesus giving his life on the cross for us all. And then on Sunday, we will host a completely different type of gathering. A gathering that not so much focuses on the cross, but focuses on the resurrection of Jesus. And at the close of that talk, we will do something we did last year for the first time ever, which is we will throw a QR code on the screen that people can scan on their phones, and it'll link to an anonymous questionnaire or an anonymous form where they can submit questions that they feel like are questions they need to have answered in terms of these are obstacles or barriers from allowing them to become followers of Jesus. And I'll tell them, I'm just going to give you heads up, this is how it will end on Easter Sunday. I'll tell them there's no question off limits. Even if someone told you, it's like, this is a question you don't ask in church, all of those questions are welcome. Any question they can think of at all, and we will take those and we'll figure out what's happening, what's the heartbeat of what's happening. And so I have no idea what we're teaching on the Sunday following Easter or the 5 weeks that follow that. I have no clue, but we will fill it with questions, grouped questions from Easter Sunday, where we will have a lot of people that decide I'll give God a shot on Easter because my mama makes me, or this is just culturally what we do on Easter Sunday, and if I got to go somewhere, I might as well go to Foundation because they gave me ice cream one time, right? Whatever that is. And they'll show up to give God a shot, and we'll say, hey, any question you've got that's keeping you from being a follower of Jesus, you can submit it. And anonymously you can submit it, and we clear the teaching schedule, and then we will start answering them. Here's the thing. If you're a follower of Jesus that were here last year, there's a chance that there will be people that ask a similar question from last year, maybe an identical question from last year. And that doesn't matter to us. We will walk through the same answer again. Or what's even better is that we've got so much prep that I put into the answers last year. I'll start with such an enormous head start, and we'll get even further and even more in depth in the answer because of how much work we put into the Q&A series last year. And so it doesn't matter what the questions are. What matters are the people who ask them and their ability to think through, hey, let me think through the possibilities and the answers of what's happening and these questions that are important to my faith. And as a community, we will support them in asking hard questions and wrestling through with the difficult answers sometimes. So we're going to do that. The other thing that we'll be doing on Easter in terms of action is we're going to continue what we've been doing here locally as a church, week to week. For those of you who have been here all year and maybe all of last year, you've noticed that we stopped talking about offering. In fact, this is only the second Sunday this year in 2024 that I've said the word offering from the stage. And we don't take up an offering. There's a bucket that sits out there. Some people put stuff in it. 99% of you use our app and do it online. Like it might even be more than 99% of you. It's just an enormous amount of crew that does it. And we just decided, I've had so many conversations with people outside of faith that said, hey, the church only wants me there for my money. And so badly, just so badly, we've wanted to say, hey, we want to change the narrative. That is not why we want you to come to church. That's not why we want you to come and fill a seat on Sunday. We want you to discover who Jesus is. And the only way to do that was for us to run a little experiment and see, can we survive as a church if I don't tell anyone to give? And so we started it last January. I mentioned offering 9 times the entire year of 2023 last year. And so far, we're on pace to mention it less than that. Because the expectation is simple. If you're a follower of Jesus, then obviously you've already wrestled through the idea of how am I partnering with what I have to do what God's doing in our community. And you've got to make a decision on that, right? And so we've had more first-time givers than we've ever had in 2023 when we talked about offering hardly at all. And we're still on pace this year. We've had more first-time givers this year. And they don't even know how to find giving. I'm not even sure. We don't even talk about how you can give. But people keep finding it. And it's because Christians have decided, I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to be doing, which is give sacrificially out of what I've got. And I don't actually need a pastor to remind me to do the right thing. Like, thank you. It's been one of the greatest seasons of ministry I've ever been a part of. Every pastor friend I have thinks we're stupid for doing it this way. Every single one. I talked to one this week that told me, that is not smart, Clint. That is not smart. You are putting this thing in danger. And I was like, it's only in danger. It's only in danger if Christians stop doing Christian things. Like that's the only time it's going to be. And so if there's a time, the other thing is I'm honest. If there comes a time when things I'll stand up and say, hey, ladies and gentlemen, we have stopped doing what we were doing, and we're going to have to either do that or I'm going to have to start. We'll make a change. I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to hide it, right? But we continue to make budget. And as budget increases, we continue to meet that demand. So at Easter, we will not use the word offering. There won't even be buckets next week for you to put offering in. And people that decide to give God a shot will see that even if they only give God a shot one time this year, that it's going to be a shot where they're not manipulated out of money or made to feel guilty because they couldn't have anything or didn't have anything to put in the plate or whatever. We're just going to talk about Jesus and the truth of his resurrection. And because those of you who follow Jesus have made that decision, you made it to where that's a possible and a doable thing. We might be the only church in the country that doesn't try to take up an offering when their largest crowd is present next week. And that's okay with me. The last thing we're going to do, those of you who sat in a seat with a card in it, those were reserved seats. You shouldn't have sat there. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. A couple of years ago, we gathered teams here. This was before we renovated the bank. There was, right where I'm standing, there was a line of tellers, of teller counters. And There was a wall over there in that square that you could see the column, and there was another wall there, right where the sound booth is, front of house. There was a wall that wasn't a wall. It was doors that came in and steps that came down in here. There was an executive's office right over there. Those doors weren't even there. It was a long hallway that went out. So all of that was still the same. There were like barriers set up for offices right where y'all are sitting over there. And this big open space in the middle was where people would come and they would do their teller stuff, and they could see the vault there, but they couldn't see the big vault because there was walls here that's behind these curtains. And we gathered our team here before any of this happened. And we put our baptistry, this little thing right here, this pig slop feed trough from Tractor Supply. And we put it right over there because we thought that the stage was going to be this way until we learned you can't knock down that wall or the building collapses. But before that, it was going to be over there. And so we put the baptistry over there, and we filled it with balloons, and we had a letter writing station. And we just said, hey, because of the way we're going to orient ourselves as a church, there's going to be a lot of people who do not know Jesus that are going to come to know Jesus. And they're going to give their life to Jesus because we will live out the Great Commission. And we will do what God has called us to do as a church. And when that happens, I want them to receive a card on the day that they're baptized from someone who was praying for their future, who was thinking about their future, who didn't see their face, didn't know their name, didn't know the date that it was going to happen, but were already thinking and just saying, this is my commitment to say, if I do what I'm supposed to do, if I go out and I impact my community and I prioritize people who are disconnected, if I take who I am as a follower of Jesus and I grow myself around the teachings of Jesus, not just the thought of Jesus, but the actual teachings of Jesus, I will put myself in a place where people who are disconnected become connected. And because of that, I'm going to go ahead and write them letters so that they will receive the idea of people have been praying and thinking about you, even though we didn't even know you for years before it happened. Well, last week we gave out the last card. And all of these names up here, except for the 3 that wrote them up here this morning, received a card from people that prayed for their future a few years ago. And so I would ask that you would write a card this morning. And I just want you to think, I don't want you to sign your name to it. I just want you to write a card so that when they walk back over here after being baptized, they've got a card where someone was praying in advance for them. So whatever you think, when you think back to the day that you gave your life to Jesus and were baptized, whatever you wish someone would have told you, whatever you wish you could have read, write that. Write that. For those of you who don't know, these are signatures, names of people that have been baptized here at Base Camp. And like I said, all but the 3 that got baptized today received a card. And so I actually need 3 volunteers to write a card to those 3 today. Can I just get 3 hands that'll write? There's 1, 2. Y'all can choose between yourselves. Yeah, either way. You gotta. So if y'all, the 3 that I just pointed out, if you will bring those cards directly to me, that'll be great. Everyone else, if you will write a card, there's a bucket out in this lobby here. So if you're going to get kids and you've written a card in here, you can drop it in the bucket out there. There's also 4 or 5 buckets at high top tables out under the awning and out in the grass. And it'll have a little sign that says baptism cards on it. There's extra cards out there. There's pens out there if you don't have one. But take a few moments. Write that down, write that letter, and drop it in any bucket that you want to, anywhere on campus, and we'll make sure that it gets into the little pile that we're going to create, and we will begin giving out those 3 for today. Actually, we had a baptism at the 9, so I do need 4. So Matt, if you'll do one also, that'd be great. So I do need 4 for today. And then the rest of them, I know we have a baptism, at least one that I'm aware of, for next week. Last thing I got. I've got a prayer that I would like for you to pray for the next 7 days, and I'll close. Here's our prayer. God, make me like the shepherd. Make me like the sweeper. Make me like the father. Keep me away from being the older brother.